Welcome to Untold, a podcast about Utah's boldest entrepreneurs and business leaders, their behind the scenes battles, breakthroughs, and what the heck were we thinking moments. These are the stories you'll wish you'd heard sooner about the cool businesses you might not know were right next door. With me today is Chris Croswhite, Executive Director at the Rescue Mission of Salt Lake City. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so we're taking a little bit of a detour today from my normal for-profit business podcast subjects to a nonprofit. Purpose comes up so many times in my podcasts with for-profit businesses, and the thought crossed my mind: who knows purpose better than nonprofits? And so, one of my podcast guests actually gave me the idea about talk to me about Rescue Mission of Salt Lake. And that gave me the idea to connect with you and talk about whether you might want to join the podcast and talk a little bit about the Rescue Mission.
Yeah, thank you so much. As a faith-based nonprofit, we're definitely a little bit different than many businesses, but at the same time, there's huge parallels because the Rescue Mission being a ministry, we're also a business and have all of the business obligations to run at the same time.
Yeah, just because you're nonprofit doesn't mean you don't care about money.
Yeah, and for the nonprofit is we definitely need finances and to make everything run, but the motivation then becomes more than the money
Mm,
and or much more beyond the money because the finances become a means to a greater end than
yeah.
finances.
Well, give us a quick introduction to the Rescue Mission of Salt Lake and what problems you address in the community.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The Rescue Mission of Salt Lake is a private, faith-based homeless service provider. And we are located uh, right now. Our most northern facility is in Ogden. It's named Ogden Rescue Mission. And then in the heart of Salt Lake, we're the Rescue Mission of Salt Lake. And then we have transitional homes as far as the Murray area in Utah. The niche in providing homeless services that the Rescue Mission fills is life transformation. And our primary goal is to help people who are currently experiencing homelessness to address the root causes of their homelessness so they can bring faith, life skills, um, recovery services into their life so they can address those causes of their homelessness so they can then return to work and be uh, and be a self-sufficient member of our community. So that's really the heart of what we do. And we do that through a number of different comprehensive inpatient programs. Additionally, we also provide emergency services. So the emergency services would be what most people think of a homeless shelter, and that would be breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the year, a day room, because a person always has to have a place to be.
Yeah.
And a person is going to be somewhere in our community. If they have no home, they're going to be on the streets, in the library, and we would like them to be with us during the day. So it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, it's a day room, it's shelter every night, it's hygiene services, outreach services, crisis care, and emergency services becomes a front door to our life transformation services.
Okay. Okay. So you're kind of helping make their lives easier, the lives of the homeless easier and safer, and give them a leg up and a process to kind of transform their life and get to where they want to be.
Exactly. Our focus is very much of one of providing not a handout, but a hand up.
Mm,
And in that, it's true that we address issues based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where if a person is worried about where they can eat and where they can sleep and are they safe. We have to meet those basic life and humanitarian needs.
Mhm.
Humanity needs is really what I'm trying to say. We have to meet those needs in a person's life before they're emotionally and intellectually, spiritually able to say, what are the greater needs of my life so they can be the person they're truly created to be.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you got to kind of stop the bleeding, if you will, of the patient before, before they can really get to healing.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so I understand that the kind of the rescue mission started first in Ogden and then down to Salt Lake in the 70s. I looked at your webpage
Yeah.
ahead of time. Um, what At what point did your path cross with the rescue mission? How did you get involved?
Well, for me, that's interesting. I was hired as um, a pastor to the homeless here at the Rescue Mission about 20 years ago.
Hmm.
Yet my story with the Rescue Mission started in 1988 when I was um, going to church with my parents. We're brand new people of faith, and our pastor of our church asked us to substitute teach for him at the rescue mission. So I first walked in the door in 1988 with my dad, and we provided the nightly chapel service. And at the time, there was a very large stage with a barrier between the chapel provider and our homeless friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I was this young 20 something year old college kid. And I'm like, who am I to stand above these men who are dealing with significant life crisis? So I got down off the stage and just stood in front of the stage with our homeless friends, and I talked with them on an even footing, face to face, because at no point did I think I was above them, which I am not. We're just in a different place in life. So, and then
Yeah.
I ended up um, volunteering a couple of times throughout the next years between 1988 and 2006 when I was formally hired at the mission. I volunteered a couple of times. So be careful when you volunteer and become involved. You never know if you're going to end up serving in that facility.
It could be an interview and nobody told you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So yeah, I'm curious. Excuse me. In a lot of my podcasts, I talk to senior leaders, um, and in my business where I do executive coaching, a lot of times leaders are concerned about how do I integrate my faith and my leadership. Yeah. And you talked about being a faith-based organization. You're a pastor. Like, I'd love your perspective on that, on faith and leadership.
Yes. So I have the same conversations with people, whether they are volunteers of the rescue mission, very successful people in their business careers, in their personal lives, where they're donors to the rescue mission, and and some of them at the end of their career, they're asking the question, really, did they lean their ladder up against the wrong tree? And they built a very successful financial career, and which is not necessarily the wrong tree, but then they're asking the questions of how do they actualize their faith in their life in the eternal. What happened for me in at the very beginning of my career when I was looking to go into business is a gentleman challenged me, a friend of mine challenged me, and he asked me if I was going to live my life for myself and for my own personal pursuits, or if I was going to live my life in light of God's kingdom. And I chose, as I was at the very beginning of my career, I chose that I would live my life in light of God's kingdom, in light of eternity, instead of just a pursuit of, my maximum benefit
Mm.
and to myself. And that's become definitional for me. That's defined my life in strategic decisions about what will I do, how will I do it, what are the goals in my life, is has been defined by, am I living my life in light of God's eternity, or just maximizing the number of days I personally have, for my own gratification.
Mm.
So
Okay.
and then, according to biblical principles in the style of leadership, Jesus teaches that the leader is the servant of all. So yes, we have a hierarchy chart, and yes, I'm the executive director, CEO. But in a real sense, if we turn that upside down, what my responsibility is to serve everybody else at the mission so they can achieve their purposes. And
Okay.
our responsibilities are different. And, I may be in contract conversations and reviewing contracts and health insurance and marketing strategies. But the goal of that is to support our ministry staff, and their goal is to transform the lives of our homeless friends. So it's then looking at our marketing strategy, or health insurance and insurance strategies in light of how does that impact our employees? How does that impact helping our homeless friends permanently off the streets?
Okay. Yeah. So you're trying to create the environment where the other people who do most of the frontline work can be successful and thrive. Um, okay.
Exactly.
You mentioned how your faith and your belief in living life not for today's maximizing today, but living it for eternity. It's definitional. Yeah. Can you think of an example of a fork in the road where that was became the defining decision maker? Or
Yeah. I mean, there has been a number of times in my career where I've been offered other positions that would be focused on just purely business, or making a profit, that would be separated from tangibly helping people. And at times it's opportunities that were more financially lucrative.
Mhm.
So especially in the short run, I could make more money in the short run, but I would have had to give up my long run goals to do that. So if forks in the road, I've chosen to make the decision based upon what God would have me do for His kingdom, as opposed to what would be financially best for me, or give me a greater financial gain in the short run.
Hmm.
So, and there
And
were times
how
that,
do you separate? How do you know what it is that you're called to do versus what you want to do? Like,
yeah,
because sometimes voices, things that come into my head, I don't know where they came from exactly. If that's inspired by a higher power, or is this just what I want?
yeah, and at that point in time, I think it's discernment,
Mm.
and having a process of discernment. For me personally, I spend a lot of time talking to my wife, and we talk about these issues. We pray together about it.
Mhm.
We look at what our goals are. We look at what our long-term, our life goals are, and and then we make those decisions carefully. At one point in time, it made absolutely economically no sense. Is I was finishing grad school. My wife was a dean of a community college. I was offered a full-time job where I was doing my practicum work, and that was living outside of the United States. And it made no economic sense whatsoever. But in going through our decision-making processes and asking the question of who we are, my wife and I, who we are as people, what are our goals, what are our objectives. I turned down the job, which would have been full health insurance, full benefits, full career. My wife resigned from her job as a dean of community college, and she had full health insurance, full retirement, full benefits, professional salaries, and we turned down um, two careers to move back to Utah, where my wife said that she originally had never wanted to live again, was in the state of Utah, and we totally changed our career paths to move back to Utah, and to be here because this is where we felt like we were supposed to be, and we completely restarted our careers in Utah with no contacts, just moving here, securing housing, and living here and starting all over. And in a worldly sense, it made absolutely no sense. But we knew that's what we were supposed to do, and that's been 25 years ago now, and we've never regretted it.
Wow. That's a great story. A real true leap of faith.
Yeah.
um, I'm curious. So in your journey, as you've been serving the rescue mission, you know, were there any misconceptions? So as you jumped into this, were there any misconceptions you had about what you were going to be asked to do, what was involved, that you didn't see ahead of time?
Well, the my personal background before coming to the rescue mission was both in business and in ministry. And the when I landed at the rescue mission and was quickly promoted to be the executive director, one of the things that surprised me is how much business goes into running a ministry. And in a real sense, my first year to 2 years of running the business, running the ministry, was learning what my job was by checking the mail, um, and reading the files in the filing cabinets and in the computer files, and realizing just everything that we had to do with negotiating and working through health insurance and liability insurance and professional licensing insurance and licensing requirements and taxes and leadership and marketing and HR, all the things associated with HR. And um, so it, um, when I talk to people now about their desire to go into ministry or nonprofit work, both, I remind them that although it is a nonprofit, it is a business. And although it is a church or it is a ministry, it is a business. And they have to run the business well to be able to support the activity of actively helping people.
Mm.
So
Mm.
many people who come into the nonprofit world, their heart and their mind is focused. I want to help people. I want to help people. I want to help people, and that's wonderful and it's noble and it's good. But what they don't realize is they have to run the business to help people. So I've learned a lot about that.
Yeah, that's great. It's kind of like, you've got an engine that needs to run well behind the scenes to be able to move the car to make the result, right? And the business is the engine, and it's a bigger part than what you expected.
For sure. And
Hmm.
a friend of mine, he's actually our current chairman of the board. His name's Tom. Um, we were having a great conversation about leadership and decisions that we were making for the rescue mission. And there's a proverb in the Bible that talks about if you have the capacity to do good, do good. So, in looking at providing for our employees, choosing the right health plan, making decisions, frequently it will come down to a decision of, does the rescue mission as an organization, do we have the ability and is it the right thing to be generous or to be um, um, to do good.
Mm-hmm.
And in light of that, the majority of the time, the answer is yes. If you have the ability to do good, do good. So do it. Sometimes it's a no, you don't have the ability to do good. And sometimes doing good is actually harmful and hurts a person more. And that's where discernment comes in, where a person may want us to buy them a bus ticket so they can live an unresponsible life and just go somewhere else to be unresponsible. Well, at that point in time, the person may think us doing good is buying them a bus ticket, but what we've learned through experience is that that would actually hurt them more
Mm-hmm.
to provide that service to them.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, speaking of experience, I guess, as you think about your years with the rescue mission, was there a mistake or a failure or something that didn't go well that in hindsight really taught you a lesson that still resonates today?
Yeah, a few of them. You know, uh, we often say that we learn by failing, and you only fail if you stop trying. So if you learn and then you adapt and overcome and keep trying, then it becomes a success. Um, a couple of things that I've learned um, is hire slow, hire the right person instead of the wrong person.
Okay.
And it can be better to leave a position unfilled until you can hire the right person. And the reciprocal of that is you can't delay inaction forever. You have to act and make decisions. The So one of my failures, I would say, would be hiring the wrong people and then having them either exit very quickly or having them not be a good fit for the organization and stay for a period of time and then exit, where
Mm-hmm.
it became unhealthy, an unhealthy partnership. So I would say hire slow and hire well instead of hiring fast. The
Okay.
um, the other thing in leadership that I have learned is how much time leadership takes. Is a leader has to take the time to lead. We have to plan. We have to think. We have to strategize. I have to think. I have to strategize. I have to think things through. And if I'm not taking the time to lead myself, to lead the organization, to develop that plan, then I'm not leading. What I'm doing is I'm responding. And the tyranny of the urgent and the everyday tasks become all consuming and take up your time, and it takes time away from leading and can take time away from having the time to lead.
Mm-hmm.
So my encouragement both for myself and me owning my statement for myself and an encouragement to others is take the time to lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow, that's profound, and so often do I hear that. Sometimes leaders almost believe like it's an act of selfishness to take that time for themselves, right? But you really have to do it. It's an investment in yourself, whether it's time, whether that time is thinking time or it's self development or it's reflection, discernment,
Yeah.
all those things. Yeah, they do take time, and it's not wasted time, or it's not just because you don't have a piece of paper that's done when it doesn't mean it wasn't real work.
Yeah, and even to for me and the rescue mission, it's considering our vision and our mission. And
Mm,
is our vision the same? And is our mission the same? And is our strategy the same? Or do we need to pivot to meet the current need of our homeless community and the current need of Utah, and then the specific cities of Salt Lake City and Ogden and greater outreach efforts? Do we need to adjust our strategy to meet those needs? And and then adjust the strategy when necessary.
Mm.
But I've also learned is don't necessarily chase the latest and greatest idea if what we're doing is already a proven strategy in helping people. Is uh, watch the new strategy for a little while and
Right.
watch the outcomes to see if it's truly bearing fruit and having significant change, and um, as opposed to just racing after the new and greatest idea all the time.
Yeah. You know, this might be anecdotal, but you were talking about pivots and having to shift. And my perception is that, you know, and this may have been driven by COVID or maybe a coincidence, but that homelessness is an increasing problem. It's not stable.
Right.
It's there's a step change or an increase recently, and I'm wondering, um, has that is that true? You know way more about it than I do. Is that true, or is it my perception? And then, if so, what pivots has that required of you and your mission?
Yes. So homelessness in the United States is going up, and homelessness in Utah has been going up. Our the number of people homeless per, I think, 10,000 people used to be around 8, and now in Utah it's over 11 people per that are homeless per 10,000. And what we're seeing is there's a direct correlation, and economically it makes sense. There's a direct correlation as a population growth increases at the same time as population density increases. That there's a one-to-one correlation as population and population density increases, that the number of people who are homeless increase as well. And that makes economic sense if we simply look at the cost of housing and the cost of food. As things become more expensive, people who are on the lower end of the economic scale,
Yeah,
their um, potential of falling into homelessness because of a life tragedy or just a life circumstance becomes greater. We've had people become homeless because their car broke down
yeah,
and
okay.
they couldn't repair it, so they lost their
Mm.
job. And they lost their job, and then a couple of months later, they've lost their apartment and they're calling us on the phone to make an appointment to move into emergency shelter as a homeless person because their car broke down and they couldn't afford to repair it. In some cases, it was a car that was totaled, not of their fault, and the insurance value of the car didn't enable them to buy another vehicle.
Mm.
So the cost of living can directly impact the number. And then, as we look at our society with issues of increased anxiety and stress and depression, PTSD from traumatic events, whether it would be military action or a life event that happened in their home, all
Mm.
of those factors are continuing to trigger people falling into homelessness. And
Opioid crisis, I guess, probably could lead to somebody being on the streets.
yeah, the vast majority
Mm.
of time there is a life issue that has happened that is driving the addictive behavior. And then the opioid or the alcohol or the methamphetamine is a numbing agent to
Mm.
speak to temporarily benefit the person so they're not dealing with the stress of the cause. And thus, the rescue mission's approach is we want to stabilize their life, stabilize them emotionally and physically and mentally and spiritually, so then they can take the risk to destabilize the area that's causing that emotional trauma and
Okay.
bring healing to that area so their life, so they can return to self sufficiency.
So homelessness is a symptom. It's not the root, it's not a condition. It's the result of something else that's happened. And then been untreated, if you will. So
Yes.
if so, I'm curious with your experience with seeing so many people in this situation. Is there something that you wish was different that might reduce some of the chain of events that leads people to need your services?
Wow. I mean, I wish that there was no need for homeless services, because that means we don't have the homeless, and we don't have people in abject poverty and dealing with life-defining issues. Um, One of my wishes would be for the greater community, um, to realize that there's in the vast majority of cases there is a reason the person is homeless. And as the person who is homeless, the, at the moment they're seeing him, that person is very likely just trying to cope and stay alive. And so being careful not to judge, because we don't know the deeper issues that is going on in a person's life. One example, this person has now passed away, but he was in combat, multiple tours in Vietnam. He was suffering post-traumatic stress, came back home, is married, children. His wife unexpectedly died, and he snapped, and he literally took his children to his relative's house and walked out of his home and started living on the streets. And he was so emotionally traumatized by his experience, in war, and the sudden death of his wife, that he emotionally just could not, bear with it. And emotionally he snapped, and he walked outside and started drinking. And um, um, and it took years and years and years to work with him and help him. Um, and during that time, he was drinking so much he was causing brain damage. And so in the end, when he joined our program, and he was able to achieve recovery, um, it was years and years later. But now he was dealing with the result that he had damaged his brain so much from alcohol. And uh, but nobody wants to experience that kind of trauma.
Yeah.
And if, as a community, if we are very careful before we judge the homeless person, and we drive ourselves to compassion first, uh, then our entire community would be better.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Compassion and not judgment. I where I live in Ogden, I live pretty close to downtown, and it strikes me the number of people I run into that are fearful of the homeless.
Yeah.
Um, which that's not made up. It's their genuine response, like they're conditioned or they had an experience or something that upset them. But I guess in my experience, um, you know, the people I run into and the people occasionally that'll say a few words to, many times just a few months ago, they had a job, they were doing something else.
Yeah.
They're normal. They're extremely sometimes embarrassed, ashamed of their situation and, not sure how to get out of it, and yeah. So, I think it can be hard. The fear can, and the difference, right, I think can make people not want to reach for compassion first.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a growing problem. And, I think for a lot of people, probably, literally, I have a couple kids I put in this category. They're literally a car accident or a medical issue away from not having enough to make ends meet,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And if we take that fear, John, and we put it, um, yes, there's fear, but we can also put that back into a business context. Is We're uncomfortable, and and there's a situation, whether it's meeting a person we don't know, a homeless person, or a business decision, or a key decision that would be redefining our business or an opportunity. And at that point in time, if we experience apprehension and confusion, if I don't know what to do, what's the right decision, there's fear, then my encouragement is education. Is is as we learn more about the decision we need to make, as we learn more about the homeless person who's on the street and how to help them, then fear in whatever is before us as a business leader or as a nonprofit leader or helping our fellow man, as we educate ourselves, then the fear goes down and enables us to return to a place of, instead of being inactive because of our fear, we can become very proactive because of the education we have learned. And that can include experience. And, so if a person is afraid of a homeless person on the street, is realize my fear is my problem. It's not the homeless person's problem. It's
mm,
how I feel. It's my problem. And then if they do something like going to the Ogden Rescue Mission or the Rescue Mission of Salt Lake, and in a safe place, a professional place, they talk with us and they volunteer, and we're side by side volunteering together. And they're behind a counter in our kitchen, and they're safe, and they're handing meals out over a counter and seeing people and talking to people. Then they're educating themselves and realizing, wait a minute, I don't need to be apprehensive about this person. They are a person. They're
yeah,
polite. And yes, there's some people who are not polite. Uh,
yeah,
and at times, those people who are not polite are responding out of their brokenness.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. I'm sure it's it's not easy being homeless. It's not a
Yeah,
condition that leads to them feeling probably a lot of positive feelings. So
yeah.
yeah, compassion can help with that too. That's great. So kind of your suggestion is, hey, work on that fear. It's your fear, not it's not on them. Get some exposure, educate yourself, and
And
that can help you to make a better decision or better response when you're faced with a new situation.
for sure. And then it's incremental growth.
Yeah.
If I'm making 100 decisions, that is directly leading up to a major decision or investment for the rescue mission of Salt Lake, or a changing
Yeah.
strategy, what I've done in is I've broken that major decision up into 100 smaller decisions. And
Mm.
I've gotten advice in education and built a team and talked to people and looked at the decision in multiple different directions, and then made incremental decisions that results in a large decision or a major change, acquiring a new facility, something like that is then broken up into multiple smaller decisions.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so like thinking about business decisions, so you mentioned you're privately funded.
Yeah,
Um, so in business, a lot of times we have some easy ways to look at decisions about money.
yeah,
We look at the return on investment, but when people are looking at an investment in something like the rescue mission, how do you think about that investment decision that a potential donor, right, is wrestling with or contemplating?
yeah. So what's the ROI of changing a person's life?
Yeah.
And that ROI is the rest of that person's life.
Mm,
So if it costs approximately $1,300 to sponsor a person on the life transformation program at the rescue mission. So if we spend that amount of money in a year to help a person leave homelessness and become self-sufficient, then every day of that year, and then every day after they've graduated and they continue to be a success and they're self-sufficient, then the initial investment is paying dividends every day for every year. Last week I had a gentleman, his name's Joey. He was on the program when I was hired at the mission. I worked with him. I interviewed him. I recommended him to seek medical treatment because he had a prolonged family history of cancer. And I'm like, Joey, this is unusual. I would go to a doctor and share your family history of cancer with a doctor.
Uh-huh.
And he did that. And he came back and he already had cancer. And he didn't know it. And he was on our program. He went through cancer treatment. He did well on the program. And now, approximately 20 years later, he walked in my door last week with his wife, with his two children. He wasn't supposed to have children. He owns a home of his own. He's successful in business. He's on vacation in Utah. And we are enjoying this this moment of talking to his kids, and that's a phenomenal ROI. Is a changed life in a marriage and father to his children. So a lot of times we're looking at a different ROI, and what is the ROI of a changed life? And then there also that person's economic impact in our community going forward. Instead of being dependent on a government subsidy, instead of being on Social Security disability and Medicaid their entire life, and not participating in building our economy, but actually consuming resources of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
What we're focused on is repairing that life so they're an active participant in our economy, instead of settling for a government benefit. And some people are definitively in need of the subsidy. They're never going to be self-supported.
Yeah.
They need the resource of the subsidy, and it's right that it's there for them. But others, if they can stand back up on their feet, we like to say, we like to say, God dependent yet self-sufficient. Where day to day they're dependent on the Lord, but day to day they're striving for their own self-sufficiency and taking care of their own personal needs. And our ROI is human lives.
Yeah,
Our
that's
ROI
awesome.
is God's kingdom instead of how much money is in the bank.
Mm. Yeah, you made the case, you made the business case and the emotional case. Right? I was getting a little dusty over on this end when you were telling that story about that guy that you worked with 20 years ago. That's
Yeah,
that must have been a really fulfilling day.
it is. And one of the questions that I personally ask and we ask at the mission is what will last for eternity, and what can we do here at the rescue mission, including building facilities, remodeling facilities, helping people, going to a sports game. How does that directly impact what we're doing for eternity? And because in the end, there's only a few things that last for eternity, and human beings are one of them, and our soul is one of them. And so, if we ask that question, it can help drive our decisions.
Hmm. With your work kind of in the trenches in this homeless
Yeah.
problem, I'm going to ask you the magic wand question. Right? So, if there was one thing that you could change tomorrow, if you were king for a day, like what would it be? What would you do that would make the most impact?
Well, we talked about people not judging, and um, so I would reiterate that is having people not judge each other. And the one of the issues in homelessness is the bigger issue of poverty.
Mhm.
And there's issues of poverty where people are underemployed, they're not employed, they're not provided a living wage. And I'm not talking about entry level jobs that a teenager would have.
Yeah.
I'm talking about employment as a fully functioning adult receiving a living wage. There are issues in poverty that are increasing anxiety, that are preventing parents because they're working so many jobs to be effectively parenting their children. And a parent who's working three different jobs and their children are latchkey and the parents can't help children with homework, then what we're driving there is generational poverty because children are raising themselves because a parent is underemployed or is not being provided a living wage. So, um, if there's one thing I can change is I would reduce the level of poverty that we're experiencing in the United States and around the world. And then that would incrementally enable people, even if they're struggling with a life issue that may result in homelessness, if they're not on the verge of poverty, they may never become homeless in the first place because they would have the
Yeah.
resources to get the help.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, my wife and I just returned from a vacation in Scandinavia, and they definitely have a different social safety net
Yeah.
there. Is that, move in that direction? Do you think that sort of thing is something that would be helpful for the homeless problem, or is it's bigger than that one,
Well, the
than
United States is
monetary?
significantly larger than Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And so, in my understanding of some of the European approaches, is moving more towards a socialist model of services. And I disagree with that model.
Okay.
And I think a natural outworking of capitalism um, is philanthropy. Is as a person strives to be a success in their life and strives for their family to be a success and pursues education and opportunity, then a natural result of that is not only our well-being, but then our well-being absent of greed, whereas we're providing for ourselves and our needs are being met, we can then help, we can provide for other people. And so it would be more a capitalist approach. I think we need the safety net of all of our social services as a safety net. But I also believe that God has given us our life and God has given us our, our talents, our personality, our talents, and He's giving us a number of days for us to invest those days in a meaningful way. And and my thinking is to help a struggling person deal with their struggle, deal with their life issue, deal with their struggle, so they too can invest their number of days in a meaningful, productive way that not only takes care of themselves but continues to build um, our entire community and our economy. If we flip that upside down and we pursue helping people through a purely socialist model, eventually the number of people we are helping is going to become so large that it's an unsustainable program. But if we look at it from a capitalistic model, is as I'm successful, and what God tells us is the two greatest things we're supposed to do as human beings, be and do, is we're supposed to love God and love people. So that's my personal goal in life is to love God and to love people. And as I'm doing that, to build God's kingdom. So if I'm doing that from a capitalist perspective, then I'm providing for myself and my family. But as I'm provided for, I'm realizing I can also help provide for somebody else. So I support other charities and then help other people out of poverty as I continue to pursue my personal goals. And that would be an antithesis of a socialist model of
Yeah.
services.
Okay. Great. Great answer. Clearly, this is something you've given a lot of thought to. I appreciate that.
A businessman
Yes.
in a ministry.
Yeah. No, that's great. Like you said, it is a business. So, you earlier on you mentioned, you take volunteers,
Yeah.
and you're privately funded. Somebody who's listened to this podcast and is interested to learn more, or experience the mission, where would you send them? Is the website the best place, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, I would send people to our website, which is in Salt Lake area, it's rescuesaltlake.org. In the
Okay.
Ogden area, it's ogdenrescuemission.org. I'd send you to our Facebook page as well, Rescue Mission of Salt Lake's Facebook, Ogden Rescue Mission's Facebook. And, our life is supposed to be meaningful and filled with purpose for ourselves and for our neighbor. And I'd encourage people, if they're interested, to volunteer at the rescue mission. And if volunteering at a faith-based organization isn't their cup of tea, then there's many other phenomenal charities and homeless service providers where people can volunteer in their areas of interest. It may be a medical provider, a medical professional, um, volunteering at a medical clinic that helps the homeless, and then they're using their gifts and their talents and their interest in volunteering in an area of their expertise.
That's great. I give you a chance to plug your organization, and you plug other people too. That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
mean, I can unashamedly plug the rescue mission. We need your help. We are completely privately funded,
Yeah.
so we can maintain our faith-based approach to homeless services. So learn more about us by going to Rescue Mission of Salt Lake or rescuesaltlake.org.
Yeah,
Come
but
volunteer.
like you said, if it's not your cup of tea, you're pointing them somewhere else. So I appreciate your generous heart, in this, and appreciate your generosity in coming here to tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about the rescue mission, about homelessness. I've learned a lot and been inspired by our conversation today. Thank you so much
Oh, you
for
bet
coming
it.
and joining me.
I've loved getting to know you and our conversations, and thank you so much for what you're doing in spotlighting the rescue mission.